I was looking at some of the previous interviews that you'd done. One of the ones I think I read somewhere that you had said that you made this so that you could look yourself in the mirror. Is that true?
Yes.
Well, and why? I mean,
Well, I not that I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, but I felt like I really needed something that would motivate me in a different way than all the sort of entertaining popcorn movies that I've made before. And I needed a reason when I get up in the morning. It's not just that I'm going to the set and I'm going to try to create a good scene, but I'm actually doing something that I feel that the people whose story I'm telling, they are getting something out of it, and hopefully the audience as well.
Well, what sort of initially drew you to this? Did you just get the script? Were you paying attention to sort of the news when it first happened, or how did you sort of get
I think that I was very much like anybody when the events unfolded at the beginning of the Olympics, that I saw what was going on but didn't really pay attention more than anybody else. And it wasn't until almost a year later when the producers from Georgia and an American producer happened to come to me with this, and I met with them just to discuss it, and still didn't know much about it. But when I saw photos from the war, video from the war, read some stories, I felt like, wow, this is a really powerful story that I really want to tell, and that I can take what I've learned before and put it into a good use. And then I went to Georgia with the writer Mikko Alane, because at this point there wasn't really a script, there was like a blueprint of the story. But when we went to Georgia and met with locals, with refugees and journalists who had been there throughout the war, and politicians and so on, then it started crystallizing for us that how we wanted to approach this was from a war journalist point of view.
Well, sort of further along those lines, I mean, you could easily have told the story from the point of view of the people themselves. Why was it important to include that sort of journalistic aspect? And then how tough was it to sort of balance the focus? Because, to focus on them exclusively, I think would maybe be to the detriment of telling an authentic story about the people.
Yeah, I felt that when I heard the stories by the journalists, there were journalists from all over the world, and one common factor was the frustration that they felt in trying to tell the story. First of all, the difficulties, like in any war zone, of getting where they need to be to see what's going on, and then secondly, trying to report it, and really, which was a shock to me. I guess I was naive. I was thinking, like, if you have news, people will want to tell those news. But in today's world, with these multinational corporations running the news organizations, there's many more agendas that we ever realize. And sometimes these journalists, they were telling me these incredibly frustrating stories where they had seen and witnessed something, but nobody cared, and nobody wanted to tell that particular aspect of the story. So that was one of the reasons why I really felt like that's what I want to talk about. I want to tell the audience about how tough it is to try to be in that profession, and not only the fact how many of them are dying or injured in these conflicts, but that still just getting the story out there is so hard. And then on the other hand, it of course opened up like a natural way of telling a story from a Westerner's point of view, an American point of view. Main character is American. There are several American characters, and that was just a way to get into the story, make a movie where people speak English, and also join the journalist with some of the civilians, because I found out soon when I was in Georgia that people are very well educated, and most of the people that I talked to spoke really good English.
How difficult is it to sort of juggle the responsibility of providing a political context, not just sort of with the situation with like the Andy Garcia character, but to actually sort of frame this so that the audience knows what's going on, but ultimately they're able just to focus on sort of the emotional journey that these characters are going through, because audiences are probably not going to be intimately familiar with all the sort of political positioning. It may be difficult for them to sort of understand why these people are the heroes and why they're the villains.
Yeah, this was one of the hardest challenges for us, because you could go on and on for hours trying to explain the history and the politics of these conflicts and how Georgia used to be part of Soviet Union and now it's independent and it's very close to America, and America is planning to have them join NATO and have a military base there, and all these sort of geopolitical facts about these countries and the ethnic problems that they've had there and so on. So it was really hard because we felt that if we only tell this kind of an emotional drama about this particular group of people in crossfire of this war, people are going to be asking like, well, why did this happen? We don't know anything. We don't know where Georgia and why. And then if we tell too much of the historical facts, it just gets boring. Because this is not a documentary. This is a fiction film, as dramatic and action-packed as possible. So that balancing act was hard, and we went through a lot of editing, and we were aware of the fact that there's always going to be people who are going to be very critical about our portrayal of the events, people who disagree with how we portray the events, but we had to take a point of view, and we based on all the facts to the reports that you can find now on the EU and UN and Human Rights Watch sites about what were the steps into this war. And it's always these conflicts when there are two sides, they will never agree on who did what, and all we can hope is that people watch the movie, form their own opinions and talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you obviously made a number of films, sort of different sort of, I guess, levels of seriousness in terms of being popcorn or more sort of straightforwardly dramatic. This story in particular carries so much sort of automatic drama. Like, what was sort of your learning process, if there was one, in sort of making sure that you were able to sort of punctuate these dramatic moments and not inadvertently even sort of trivialize them as sort of movie drama, but to sort of depict it in a way that you felt like was authentic and that the audience would connect with in a real way, as opposed to like, well, there's a guy hanging off a skyscraper shooting at people, or whatever.
Yeah. Obviously, I've done a lot of popcorn movies, and I was counting on my experience in telling those stories, in being able to use it in this more serious context. And the balance was really, how do you make a movie that is still entertaining, yet deals with the facts, that is responsible in terms of telling the story of these people that I want to tell the story of. And for me, it was a balance of showing the country, showing the beauty of the country, showing the culture and the history of the country to a certain extent, and making it a character story. Telling a drama that has enough of the elements that make a good story, but doesn't get too Hollywood. Showing the atrocities of the war and the battles of the war without exaggerating them, and it's a hard balance. It's really because in some cases the videotape that I saw from the actual war was so much more horrifying than I could ever show in the film, that I actually had to tone down things, because we were shooting in many instances in actual locations where things had happened, and we were recreating a lot of events that had happened. But they were so horrendous, some of them, that I knew that if I showed them in the movie, nobody would want to even see it.
Mm.